Are you showing up on podcasts but not seeing a return? In this episode of Biz Help for You, discover how to transform your podcast guest appearances into a powerful revenue stream. You'll learn actionable strategies to position yourself as an expert, attract ideal clients, and scale your brand with a six-figure podcast strategy. Whether you're new to podcast guesting or ready to level up your results, this episode is your roadmap to podcast profitability. So Sheryl, welcome to the show.
Hey, Candy, great to be with you. I'm excited for this topic. I think a lot of people are, wanting to get out on more stages, but then questioning, how do I actually make that work for my business? So excited to chat with you today.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
I know people will be excited to hear what you have to share as well, because I'm sure there are people who have been on podcasts, haven't really seen a return on that investment and wondering if it's worth the effort. So I'm sure you will have some fabulous tips for them. And I first want to just start with, maybe the mindset. What is the mindset that entrepreneurs really need to have in regards to how to monetize the podcast guest appearances effectively?
I think it really stems from the idea that what is a good business foundation? What is something that you need to be doing in your business, no matter whether it's through podcasting or other means? And the answer to that question is building relationships. That businesses benefit from having relationships with other people. And depending on, we're going to get into more detail about what my strategy is around that, but that is the premise of it. So what I love about building relationships is that we're doing it right now. You and I are building a relationship by the fact that I'm here and on your show. And I hope that after this episode, we'll be able to stay in touch, and that I'll be able to follow you, you'll follow me, and we'll be able to maybe touch base from time to time in the future, because we don't know where that relationship will go. And so I liken this to a dating relationship. If you're looking to get out and find your, a partner, you're going to go out and get yourself out there, right? And start inviting people to have a coffee date and see where it goes from there. And then do we progress to going out for dinner? And then, it's a relationship building approach. So I think that is the mindset. Where I think a lot of people get stuck is they think that getting on a podcast is going to solve all of their business problems. And that's not the case. What you want to be doing is leveraging podcasts in order to build high trust relationships with other people, because that's a foundational thing for your business, to be able to know people. And not only do you know people, but that they know you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true too, because I think a lot of times people think, well, I'm going to be on a podcast and then all the sales are going to come in, right? And it's more than just one appearance too. And it's things that you have to do, which I know I read in the intro, there's kind of a strategy, and you just mentioned you have a strategy. So I would love for you to just walk us through what your strategy really is and what makes it work so well.
Well, let me preface by saying that podcasting is a stage. It is a form of stage. And so why podcasting is great for relationship building is because it is conversation based. It's a perfect modality for relationship building because we're able to talk to each other and we're able to converse and dialogue. And that's why it's so perfect. Are there podcasts out there that don't have interview style? Absolutely. Are you able to build relationships through leveraging a podcast that's a solo speaker? Well, not as much, because you don't have guests. You don't have other people dialoguing. And that could be two people like you and I right now are doing, or it could be a panel of people on a podcast. It could be multiple people as well. So I will get into the strategy. And let me start by saying that because podcasting is a stage, we want to be leveraging podcasting to find our first P, so the strategy, I call it the 3P podcast monetization strategy, which is a 6-figure podcast. Actually, I would argue it's not just a 6-figure, it's a 6 and 7-figure. I mean, you're only limited by your own imagination of how far you can go with this, but we'll call it a 6-figure minimum strategy. And the first P of the 3Ps is patrons. So that means how you can leverage podcasting to find patrons for your business, prospects, people who could become clients for you. So I think this is especially wonderful when you are a podcast host, because you're able to bring on your patrons that are existing, your actual clients, whether those clients have been people that have paid you, or for some newer coaches and consultants out there who maybe you've done some free work for, but you've helped someone get results, you can still leverage your podcast stage to edify them and to highlight them as success stories, as case studies of the work that you've done with them. And that only positions you in a good light as someone who knows what they're doing and is able to get people results. And so I think that piece around what we call patrons of the 3P strategy is a really powerful thing, to be able to leverage podcasting to edify, to be able to highlight results and wins is a great way to go.
Mm-hmm. So I know you said there's multiple P's, and you had the first is patrons, which is probably the main reason people want to go to, is to get clients, right? But I would love to hear your others as well.
Yeah. So the second P is partners. Now, these partnerships can vary. I mean, we have unlimited numbers of relationships that there can be from a partnership perspective. So whether that be maybe forging an actual legal partnership with someone else, I mean, you can certainly leverage a stage like a podcast to find someone who you could have that type of legal partnership with in your business. But I think more commonly, these are relationships that are, say, strategic alliances, where we strategically come together and forge a bond with a common business goal in mind. So having a strategic alliance is a great way to go. You might also think of this as a collaborative, maybe even a content swap would be a good example, especially on social media. You come on mine and I come on yours is a great way to collaborate with someone else as well, and maybe even test the waters of the relationship. And especially as it relates to any audiences that may be in play on both sides of that equation, how responsive and engaged they are with the content that we're swapping out. So strategic alliances, joint ventures, right? Actually, that's what I do in Icon Maker with my 2 business partners. We have a joint venture. We've ventured together and have created, a 7-figure business out of that. So joint ventures, strategic alliances, partnerships of all description, legal or otherwise, collaborations. So that's what we mean by partners. And obviously, there are all kinds of different scenarios that could play out. It could be affiliate relationships, for example, mailing for someone else in a referral partnership capacity for an upcoming launch or an offer, or maybe even a future launch. So lots of different ways to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think too, you're talking about that, it makes me think, a lot of people think a lot of times when you're talking about partners, they're talking about maybe people who are sponsors for your show too, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about building relationships with other people where you can be hosting maybe summits together or panels or different things too. So it's more like other business owners that are kind of maybe have the similar customer as you do too, where you could start building those relationships.
It could be that we have the same audience, or it could be that that's part of the relationship that works, is because we have different audiences and we're serving them in different ways, whether it's upstream or downstream in the customer journey. But to your point about the sponsorships, that could definitely be an opportunity. Think of it as biz dev, right? It's business development opportunities, and it could be sponsorships. For example, if someone has a big list, let's say they have, I don't know, name a number, like a list of 50,000 people, right, on an email list. And I forge a relationship with someone by meeting them on a podcast and having that foundation. I might want to sponsor that email drop for something that I'm doing, or it could be sponsoring a stage. So I think
Mhm.
sponsorships is just a way to work with other people. And it's one of the things that could come out of a relationship that's being built through this particular type of stage.
Mhm. And then you had a third P that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the third P of the strategy for the six-figure podcast guest strategy is the idea of platforms, meaning that, for example, Candy, you have a platform here. This is your
Mhm.
stage. And I'm honored to be on your stage today and to be able to share these ideas and strategies with you and your audience. So this is a platform. I don't know, you might have other platforms. You might have other stages that I'm unaware of. And because we're building a relationship, I may ask or you may offer to have me come on another stage in the future, maybe next week, maybe next year, maybe 3 years from now. But if we build a relationship and we stay in touch with each other, I don't
Mhm.
know what other platforms may come from our relationship. And the reverse is true as well. I have
Mhm.
platforms as well that you may be a really good fit for. And if we forge a relationship and we stay in touch, those opportunities could be coming your way as well. So the third P
Mhm.
of the strategy is platforms, and they can come in many shapes. Podcasting is one of them. Speaking on, it could be a Facebook Live, it could be a physical stage, an actual, sometimes people host retreats in Mexico, or it could be, I have
Mhm.
a mastermind group with high level clients and we need to bring in guest experts every single month because that's one of the deliverables of our mastermind of our program, is that we've promised them that we're going to bring smart people in to talk on a variety of subjects every single month. So there are
Mhm.
many different types of platforms out there, and that's the third P of the strategy.
Mhm. And I think a lot of times when people hear the word platform, they immediately think now social media platforms, right? But I think, like you said, by talking about it could be speaking on a stage, it could be on a summit, it could be a podcast. Like there's a lot of different ways that it could be platforms. So I think that's great that you actually shared specifically what you mean by that too, because people might just be thinking social media.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely be a social media. It could be, for example, if you have a YouTube channel, maybe you
Mhm.
bring someone else on to discuss a topic and that gets recorded and put on your YouTube channel. There are really, platforms are stages, and there are numerous types of stages out there. So I think that when you start to explore through those three P's and through the lens of three P's, rather than what normally happens, people are thinking about the downloads. They're thinking about, well, is this podcast going to get the number of downloads? Am I going to be able to find those metrics, which I frankly at this point believe are vanity metrics? I
Mhm.
don't really think that that's as important as forging a relationship with a person. And certainly, I'm not discounting the fact that there is an audience. But what often happens is people rely on only the audience and they negate the relationship side. And
Mhm.
that's where things don't really work out as well as they'd hoped, because they go, sometimes they're disappointed. They go, oh, well, that show didn't get as many downloads. Therefore, wasn't able to get my lead magnet out to as many people. And
Mhm.
it's like, if you just kind of switch your mindset around that and say, okay, why don't I build a relationship with the host of the show? Because we may be able to actually collaborate together to get my gift or lead magnet or opportunity or whatever to their audience in a different way and maybe even a more effective
Mhm.
way.
Mhm. Well, and someone that might have a lot more downloads on their episode may still not even have the ideal customer for the person who's guesting. And so, yeah,
Correct.
they might have had a bunch of people listen, but you might not have anyone follow up with you, where maybe a show that has fewer downloads, but they have specific, clients that you want to serve, you might actually have a better return on that smaller show than the bigger one.
100%. Because let's say an email list, we'll compare and contrast a podcast audience, which is everyone who has access to podcasts, who are driving and at the gym and chauffeuring their kids around. Everyone has access to that. And yes, certainly you're going to see people who gravitate towards certain types of shows based on interest, etc. Versus an email list, which has been curated and has been built on the premise of something more specific. So
Hmm.
it's more advantageous to really be I either say promoting or mailing through the email list because it's more specific to what people are actually in that list for in the first place.
Hmm. Right. So if someone is wanting to find the right podcast for them to be on, like what tips do you have for them to search those out so that they can be on the shows that are the best fit for them?
I'd like to recommend that you think about it first and foremost through the lens of who the host is and doing a little bit of homework on who is that person. Maybe you check them out on LinkedIn, maybe you check them out on a social platform where they have a presence, or you check out their website and you start to dig a little bit. This is where I also think that AI can come in handy, is being able to utilize ChatGPT or name your large language model of choice, right? I use
Hmm.
ChatGPT a lot, but you may utilize ChatGPT to help analyze someone's social profiles or website and say, give me the summary of who this person is and whether or not this is someone that I should be building a relationship with based on my goals in my business. And so I think that's where you get really smart with AI agents or with custom GPTs or with chat, and to be able to figure out if that's indeed a relationship worth forging. And so I think that's where I would, start, is who is the host and what are they up to? Do I see a fit, whether as a, again, through patron, partner, or platform, to be able to contribute to what it is that they're doing? I'm not really I don't love the word pitch because I
Hmm.
think it has a negative connotation, but the idea that you would do a little bit of research to figure out how can I contribute to them, and will there be potentially, and we don't know if there will be some type of benefit to you and your business, but is there a high likelihood that there is? Is there a
Hmm.
higher likelihood than not that there's some potential where we could collaborate in some way, shape, or form in the future? Often we don't know whether that's the case unless we have an actual conversation. And sometimes that happens in the podcast itself, and or after and or before the podcast itself. All of these are touch points along the journey of that relationship building.
Hmm. So if someone has identified now a show, that they want to be on, they have a scheduled recording time now, right? So they are going to have an actual podcast interview. Like, what do you recommend that they do to make sure that that appearance supports their business goals?
Well, I think it's coming in with value in mind. How can I contribute the very best to my ability, from a talking point perspective? Like, what value can I bring to the conversation, no matter what the topic is, to be able to come in? And I think that's really where you as an entrepreneur need to do your homework and figure out what frameworks have you developed in your thought leadership arsenal. And one of the things we work on with our clients too, and at Icon Maker, is that we say, you need to have a framework. A lot of people don't. They just kind of have this sort of stream of consciousness. So you'll
Hmm.
notice that here I came in and have, like, I call it the 3P podcast monetization strategy. It is a 6-figure podcast guest strategy that I'm sharing, but it's a framework. It's three, in this case, 3 steps and 3Ps. So a lot of entrepreneurs don't have those types of frameworks developed. And I recommend that they do, because now you're able to be on a show and be able to provide value through something that that not only the host, but the listeners or viewers, if it's a video podcast, can follow along easily and can follow, okay, that was number one. And then that was number two. And that's number three. People are listening to podcasts when they're doing other things. They're in the car, they're at the gym, they're running errands, they're taking the kids everywhere, they're traveling, whatever, they're on a plane. And so you want to be able to give frameworks that people can easily remember.
Hmm. I mean, that's a great point too. I think a lot of times people think, well, I'm just going to come and see what happens, what questions I get asked. I'm going to go with the flow, right? But it is important to have some kind of idea in mind of what you want to share even, and have that in place so that you can make sure you get across the ideas you want to have too. Because I know sometimes as hosts, we don't always know the information you want to share to ask the right questions either. So if you have in mind the things you want to share and we start having a conversation, then it's probably going to go that direction, right? But if you're just waiting for the host to ask you the right question, right, that may not happen.
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, you definitely want to be going into it with some type of framework or frameworks
Mhm.
so that you can, I like to use the analogy of pulling it off the shelf, right? You're pulling your digital frameworks off the shelf for whatever opportunity comes your way. But I do
Mhm.
think there's also something to be said for being able to extemporaneously speak on the spot and ad lib and be able to
Definitely.
add value even outside of your preparation. I don't think that's something that people do without practice. You know, I
Mhm.
spent 25 years as a TV broadcaster, so I'm pretty attuned to being able to speak on the fly and off the cuff and be able to ad lib because I did it for 20,000 hours of broadcasting in my career. But not everyone has that. I think it just comes from practice and being able to speak on your feet.
I agree. I think some people are probably nervous, especially at first, so they might have all their things written out that they want to make sure they say versus being able to have that conversation as well too. And I mean, even when I do my shows, like I usually ask people if there's something specific they want to talk about. So I know to ask those questions, but often I'm asking things just because I'm listening to what you're saying and then I'm thinking of another question that comes up. And so it's just off the cuff basically if you want to say it that way, but at the same time we do have a structure to the whole thing as well too. So I think like you say, going with the flow, having a little bit of a plan, but being willing to kind of go where it goes, I think is important on both sides.
Yeah, being able to be flexible I think adds interest to your appearance on someone else's show. But admittedly, it is a skill, and you will need to build that over time. If you are newer to podcast guesting, there is nothing wrong with having notes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being prepared and writing out your talking points. And maybe you keep them on an index card or a digital note on your computer and then put it near your camera at the top so that you can see it from your peripheral vision or have it near you physically in your peripheral vision. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If anything, it shows and demonstrates to the host that you take this seriously and that you're
Mhm.
coming in prepared for that talk. But when you are more seasoned and you have done it more, you may not necessarily rely on that preparation, save for your framework. And that's where I
Mhm.
think it gets special because then you're able to be invited onto a stage at the last minute and be able to hold your own. And that has happened. You know, sometimes
Mhm.
I'm in situations, I do a lot of networking and know a lot of people who have stages. And you never know if someone says, oh, someone pulled out, they got sick, the kid had an accident. Who can come out and speak? We have a gap to fill. To be able to jump in that situation, go, yeah, I can totally talk about my framework. That's an amazing skill to have. You'll build
Mhm.
up to that. But when you're first starting out, make notes, be prepared, be able to talk. And I think you just have to get out there and practice more.
Mhm. So, how can someone use a podcast episode then to move listeners into their funnel without sounding overly promotional?
Well, I think one of the things that I like to share is when you are a guest to your seed results, seed your offer, seed your program, seed things throughout the episode itself. I'll give you an example because I've actually done it here. I just realized now I've done it with you, which is I had mentioned maybe once or twice in our conversation so far that I have a joint venture and that I run a program called Icon Maker. And actually, I just realized now I just did that quite naturally without even thinking that I did it. So I didn't do it intentionally going, oh, this is where I'm seeding this. It just happens because I guess I'm more skilled and can do that without even it crossing my mind. But that is something you can do. You do need to practice that because otherwise it can sound forced and it can sound contrived. So
Mhm.
you don't necessarily want that to be the case. But I did do that already in this episode. I talked about the joint venture and on the program. That's one thing you can do. I think another thing is to, come in with a gift, come in with something that people can opt into. A lot of people that I speak to or coach get really caught up in the idea of the lead magnet, right? And they have to have everything perfect with the lead magnet. They need to have all the technology running in automations and workflows. And it isn't that case at all. If you're just starting
Mhm.
out, Your lead magnet could be as simple as a valuable checklist. And that valuable checklist can be sitting on your computer in your Google Drive folder. And you could send that off as a PDF to somebody one by one. It doesn't have to be technologically complicated or complex when you're first starting out. I think that's one of the misconceptions. And I also believe we're at a point now where not everyone is looking for yet another PDF download. We've been there and we've done that. When you're first starting out, that may be where you need to start. And I think there is still value in PDF so long as there's a lot of utility baked into that PDF.
Mm-hmm.
Because information now is a commodity and we can get everything we need to know from AI. So your thought leadership needs to be baked into whatever gift it is that you come up with, whether it's simply starting with a PDF or a list or a checklist or a template, or you're going to something more elaborate, and I'll share mine with you a little bit later, which is a little bit more elaborate, but you may not start there. And so I think it's the piece around having a gift, having something you can offer, not getting too caught up in the complexity of what that could be in terms of workflows and automations, but just thinking about it as an asset in your business. You need to be creating assets in your business.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, this has been very informative. I know we are coming close to the end of the time we have together. So I wanted to ask, do you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners? And if they want more information from you, how can they connect with you?
Yes, we have a directory. Right now it's 2,500 plus podcast hosts that are looking for guests. They've been curated and put into our ultimate directory of podcasters. And you can get lifetime access for free, ultimate directory of podcasters.com. And it's a directory of 2,500. We're always adding more podcast hosts to the directory as well. So those who are members will benefit from that as we add more podcast hosts. And they're specifically curated for the entrepreneurial world. So this is the entrepreneurs, the coaches, the consultants who are seeking opportunities for stages and platforms where they could, again, meet wonderful people like you, Candy. So that's what we have to offer. It is free. And then from a social perspective, I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. Like, you can find me at Sheryl Plouffe, and I'd be happy to send you more resources and love to chat with you as well in the DMs.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my show, Sheryl. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation that we had and the tips that you shared.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.